There we are. We are live with today's N10-008 Network Plus Study Group. Had to think about it for a second. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking in. It's been very busy, which is why I can't apparently recall what I'm doing with everything right in front of me. But that's okay. We're here now. The clock is going. We are streaming. The streaming server looks good. The cameras are set up. Everything's ready to go but me, apparently. Hey, chat room. How's everybody doing? Good to see you. Thanks for being here. If you're watching on the replay, we'll get started in about 9 minutes, top of the hour, and or you can hang out with us in the pre-show. I guess I should put the map up, right? We need our map for the pre-show. I should probably put that because this is here. That doesn't help you. I need to flip over. You can look over my shoulder here and see the map. There's the map. Now you can see there's a map here, and even you can put your digital pin, P-I-N, there we go, in the map itself. You can see you can click on the map and add yourself to the list. For those of you that are here, thanks for being here live. Thanks for just hanging out with us. I have all new questions for you today, so this will be good. So folks in the chat room already talking about the differences between the N10-008 and 09. Which one do you take? All of those things. We will talk about that in the live stream today. These are very popular questions. I only get 20 or 30 of them in a day. Not that many. Not that many. I think we're okay. We got a lot to do though for Network Plus. The Network Plus videos are being rolled out currently. I'm very pleased, so happy with how they've turned out. I edited 2 more videos this morning. I've got a bunch in the can. We're shooting again tomorrow. I love it when we're creating content like that. We're putting it out. I feel like all of this work, it's literally taken months to get to this point, and then finally you can produce a video and put it online. And it's just very gratifying whenever all of that finally happens. And we're at that point right now where it's very gratifying. It's also gratifying when it's done. I'm with you. I hear you. But this is a good time to do things. This is the exciting time. If you're a content creator, this is when you're actually creating the content. Interestingly enough, that part's relatively straightforward. It's the straightforward part that you miss when you're building it. It takes months to build it, but that's really the important time, is when you're building it. And I do spend a lot of time building the content because I want to be right. When are we going to switch over to 009? That's a fine question. I think whenever we get like a mass of people who are suddenly focusing on 009. The 008, of course, is still available until December. And a lot of the content between the two is very similar. So I think sticking with the 008 for now is okay. Most of the times, it's usually about 3 months after an exam is released. That's what it's average. So the 009 was released last month. So we got another couple months left. That kind of thing. Oh, you want the link? There's the link. ProfessorMesser.com/QA to put your virtual pin, P-I-N, in the map. So folks checking in from all over the place. We got the Philippines. We got India. We got Greenland. I want to know if you're in Greenland, like for sure. Like really, you're not there in Greenland. You're probably over here in Greenland or over here. I don't know if you're up there. I want to know what your internet service provider is, because I want them as my internet service provider. And secondly, is it cold? That's really the question. Greenland is not too green, so I want to know. It's always a discussion we have. Oh, now it's gone. You took your pin out. That makes me sad. People are now moving. They're literally moving around the countries right now as we are here live. They're making that happen. Thanks, folks, for being here. We've got some folks even checking in the chat room from California and Panama City, Florida. They're right there on the beach. Panama City, Florida, and Pensacola, just a little bit further away from me. There's Ontario, Canada. I will let Mrs. Professor Messer know that Canada is checked in. Hello, South Africa. Hello, Middle Georgia. Would that be the state or the country? I think it's a fine question. ATL, must be the Hotlanta. Thank you for being here. We got Germany's checked in. Massachusetts and Worcester up there They're checking in. We've got Yersi has checked in. So we got folks there from Jersey. I'm assuming that's the original one, not the new one. Is it Old Jersey? We don't call it Old Jersey. We just call it Jersey. Jacksonville, more Floridians checking in today. Good to have you folks here. We are, of course, ourselves in the great state of Florida. So if you are here in Florida, then you're in my time zone. You're in my time zone. And of course, for those of you not familiar with Florida, in the summer, and in this hemisphere, we are in the summer, it is just raining every day. Every day in the afternoon is rain. And of course, the afternoon is when I shoot my videos. So I have to shoot the videos quickly, get them in the can, get them in here. And then finally, okay, we're good. Do we get to do a meet and greet? No, do not stop by the house. That's not a good idea. We should do something, though. I'm not too far away from I'm in Orlando, so there's plenty of things to do here. A lot of places to go, a lot of places where you can meet and greet and say hello and that kind of thing. But we've just never done one. Of course, now's not the time. And the middle of the summer is not the time to do a meet and greet. But when it gets cooler, maybe that'd be kind of fun. We'll go hang out at what do they call it now? Disney Springs. I was going to say Downtown Disney. It's not called Downtown Disney. And the Lake Buena Vista shops. We'll go way back. What was it called then? I think it was just called Lake Buena Vista. Anyway, but the Disney Springs is a fun place to hang out because there's always something to see and do and those types of things. Folks checking in from Holland, Michigan. St. Louis is here. We've got Louisiana and LA, Manchester, Charlotte. We got folks we do have 2 time zones. It's kind of how things work here. We got all the folks, most of the state is here on the Eastern time zone, and then you cross over the Chattahoochee, and it's the Chattahoochee, right? And once you cross over Chattahoochee, right there, right between Bristol and Bluntstown, you go to Central Time. Did I do it right? I think I did it right. All right, let's see. We got 2 minutes. 2 minutes, Mr. Sinatra, before we get started. Be in great shape. Quebec is here. Ireland is here. Indiana is here. Chicago is here. We got Sweden and Italy. Albuquerque. We got Pakistan, Hungary. Some folks here from way down yonder, which is around my parts. Around here in these here parts. Myrtle Beach. DC is here. North Carolina. Germany. Don't just check in for the Professor Messer live stream thinking it's something German related. We have no talks of we will talk of knives for the next hour. We will not talk of knives for the next hour. Oh, but look at this map. People are checking in from all over. You can't see it too well over my shoulder there. People are checking in from all over the world. Thank you for being here. We will get started here in a minute or two. I've got all new questions for you, which will be kind of fun. We've got we'll do a last camera check. The camera's looking pretty good, right? Those 4 there, the big cameras. We'll put up the intro. We've got recordings are going. You can kind of see the Cylon down there. He's a little cut off. You might not even see very well on the stream. Yeah, you can kind of see that on the stream. It's not broken out there. So we're in pretty good. But we are, what I didn't put on is the do not disturb. So let's do that. Let's click the moon, and it says, whoops, I did a different one. I did driving. No, I want do not disturb on. Now we are not disturbed. That was it. I could just do that and not be disturbed. It doesn't work that way. They know where I sit. They know where the studio is. The family still shows up. There's nothing you can do. So we'll figure that piece out. Oh, okay. We are now here approaching the top of the hour. We are in pretty good shape. I think it's time for a live stream to get started. We'll get rid of our lower third. We will flip over to the big screen, and away we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the July 2024 Professor Messer N10-008 Network+ Study Group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and we get to see in real time if you really know some of this information that we've been working on. We have a lot to go through today. I have all brand new questions as usual. So we'll get to really see how much you know about these things that we have been working on with this Network Plus, and we'll answer some of the questions that you have. This first hour is all Q&A, and in the second hour, I will open up the live streamed questions from you. In fact, you can submit your questions at any time by going to the top of your screen at this URL. ProfessorMesser.com/QA is the URL you want to visit. That is the one where there will be questions. You just stay on that URL, and there'll be questions presented to you during this live stream. In fact, I have a question from last month that I have put on here. It's something that maybe you are familiar with. If you open up your browser and go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, you'll see a question waiting for you that states, in a router, a static route has a higher priority than what obtained from a dynamic routing protocol. Which of the following would describe this prioritization? Would that be traffic shaping? I guess I should get my head out of the way first. I apologize. Let's see if we can do that real quick. There we go. Is it traffic shaping, gateway of last resort, trunking, administrative distance, or load balancing? As always, of course, and our major rule as we sit through the live stream is that please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to answer at the URL that you see here, ProfessorMesser.com/QA. That's the one you will hear only 700 or 800 times during this next hour. So that's the one that will lock in your answer. Please go to that URL and tell us what you think the answer is to that question. We're going to come back to this question in just a moment. Well, thank you for being here. We do a Network Plus study group every month, and this is the one for July. I can't believe we're already in July. But of course, when we are not here with our live streams, there's so much more going on. If you're here for Network Plus right now, there's a lot going on with Network Plus because, of course, last month, CompTIA released their N10-009 version of their exam. And, of course, we have an N10-009 training course for that, and we are putting those videos out actively. I put a number of videos out yesterday. So that is one where if you are someone looking for the latest type of content, we'll talk about what the differences are between those two. That is a good place to go. You should subscribe to our YouTube channel right now because there's a lot more videos to come. Simply visit ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube and you can subscribe to our channel right there, which you should do anyway, just because it's fun and it's nice and it makes me happy when you do that. So thank you for all of your support, by the way, in making that happen. We also have a weekly Network Plus pop quiz question. Today's pop quiz question went out today. Today is Network Plus Day. You can find that on the service formerly known as Twitter. You can go to ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter and the service still known as Instagram at ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram if you like your questions with a pretty picture. Those are great places to go to keep track of what we're doing here. But if you'd like to find us on LinkedIn or Facebook or these other social media sites, just type in ProfessorMesser.com/ the name of the location, and I think you'll be able to find us just fine. Well, the N10-008 exam is one that was released in September the 15th of 2021, and CompTIA has told us that we are going to retire this version of the exam. So if you've been studying for the N10-008, you're probably doing that right now. You should continue to study because this exam will still be around until December the 20th of 2024, which means as we sit here in July, you have plenty of time to study that version of the exam. And right now, given the number of resources available on the internet and elsewhere, this is still probably the one you will want to take. I don't know that, I know that some people are saying, I'm going to go take the 009, but now you have limited study materials available, limited number of books available, limited number of videos. Just doesn't make much sense. So the 008 is probably your better bet as we sit here in July of 2024. This is a single exam. It's 90 minutes in length. You get a maximum of 90 questions, which means you could get fewer than 90 questions. And the score that you need to earn on a scale from 100 to 900 is a number 720. 720 is the number that you need to earn. Now, what does that mean? We don't know. We just know that it's the number that you have to reach. How you get that number, we're not told how that's calculated. So we just have to do the best we can, which is, of course, how these things usually work, is you need to do the best you can to get the best possible score. The exam itself consists of multiple choice questions and performance-based questions, and we'll talk about performance-based questions in just a bit. Now, of course, as I've already mentioned, there is a new version of the Network Plus exam available. And right now you could take either the 8 or the 9, at least until December. This N10-009 exam, it says scheduled for release. It was released on June the 20th of 2024. We're now going back in time to last month's, I guess. It's time to update my slide, which means if we count forward approximately 3.5 years, we would expect this N10-009 exam to be retired somewhere around the calendar quarter of 2027. So this is where we have to start making decisions about which one is the best one to take right now. I think 008 is still a viable alternative, probably the best one. But of course, if you are studying for the N10-009, you don't have a deadline of December. So there might be some advantages to that as well. Some of you have already sent me notes saying, I can't study and have all of this done by December. So I'm going with the 009. Perfectly reasonable and a perfectly good decision to be made there. Again, 90 minutes for this exam, 90 questions as a maximum, the same score, 720 is what we need to earn, and the same layout. Everything is basically exactly the same except the content, except the questions they're going to be asking of you. How much of that is similar to the old? Well, if you want to stick around to the after show, I'll be glad to bring up my comparison chart. We can look to see the details of what's really different between the 008 and 009. And ultimately, it is an interesting set because there are differences between all of those. So something to keep in mind. Now, of course, we have study materials for both the 008 and the 009. You can find them all on our website at ProfessorMesser.com. Our 008 videos have been done for quite some time, and so there's probably most of your content, available content, is going to be for the 008, and we indeed have our Success Bundle available. You can find that at ProfessorMesser.com/netsuccess, and this is a great place to go to find the downloadable videos, audio files. We have our course notes. There's so much there. You can read all about it at ProfessorMesser.com/netsuccess. This live stream will be available to watch on a replay along with all of the other replays on our YouTube channel immediately after we are done here. And I create an audio-only version of this that I distribute in podcast form. You can add this to your favorite podcast listening program by visiting our website at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast, or you can use your favorite streaming service. For example, if you're on the Spotify, you can simply type in Professor Messer and the podcast will come up there as well. And if you would like us to be on your favorite streaming service, simply let me know and I'll see about adding us over to that one as well. We've got lots to go through today, but before we do that, you may want to go back in time to look at some of the replays once we are done. Fortunately, if you look into the YouTube video description, one of the things you'll notice is that there are timestamps in the video description where you simply click a time and it jumps directly to all of that. So make sure you have a look at the available timestamps that's put in there by my marketing manager, Lori. Hey, Lori. She is going through and watching this on a replay right now to make that happen. So hopefully this can give you an idea of where you can find things very, very, very quickly. So have a look at the timestamps that are there. You may be able to find the things and get through these videos even faster and learn everything that you need to learn. Also let you know that when we are done here, come on over to Discord because we've got a fantastic community there of people who are studying for their Network Plus exam along with many other exams. And it's a great place to hang out, meet some other folks who are studying, and you can create an ad hoc study group right there and try Q&A, watch some videos together, and learn more about the Network Plus exam. You can find that at ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your exam, and don't forget that on our website, if you are in the US or Canada, you can take it for less because we have discounted vouchers on our site. If you would like to get those vouchers or have a look at them, they are at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. I also give you something a little bit extra. I've written a book called My Exam Hacks ebook. It's a short little book that gives you a number of different tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years for taking these exams. And there's some tips and tricks in there that you may find very, very helpful. Could even help you during your exam itself, something you get for free by simply purchasing your voucher from our website. So not only are you saving money, you're even getting something on top of that. You can find that at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about the question that we just went through. This question asks, in a router, a static route has a higher priority than one obtained from a dynamic routing protocol. Which of the following would describe this prioritization? Would it be traffic shaping, gateway of last resort, trunking, administrative distance, or load balancing? We'll close the poll and see that 56% of you, which by the way is better than it was last month for our rewind question, say administrative distance. But 23% of you say the answer is traffic shaping. And then we have 8% for load balancing, 7% for trunking, and 3% for gateway of last resort. This is one of the big challenges, of course, whenever you're working inside of a router, is how does the router know what the best direction is to send all of these packets? It has to make a forwarding decision. Where does it forward the traffic to? And it's very possible in some routers where you might have the same route to a location, but go out different interfaces. Well, which one does it choose? It has to make a decision, and it chooses this based on an administrative distance, based on how the route was originally learned. So if you type it in yourself, it gets an administrative distance of 1. The lower numbers are better. So you want to have a low number. It's like golf. If it's a route that is directly connected to the router, your static route isn't even going to work because a local connection has an administrative distance of 0. That's how that works. And then you can see some of the other routing protocols that might be used and how you might learn those particular routes. And you can see the default administrative distances for those, although in many routers, you can change those administrative distances, although most of us generally do not. That was the answer we were looking for. Administrative distance is the answer, and we did a little bit better this month than we did last. These are a bit of a challenge. So if you are still working through this idea of administrative distance, this is a topic that applies not only to the N10-008, but the N10-009 as well. Make sure you have a look at those and understand the differences between all of them. Well, I think now that a lot of you were able to get in and connect and answer the question. So now it's time to refocus our efforts to something new. That was a question from last month. So let's now do all new questions. And that's what we have coming up next. But instead of doing another multiple choice question, I want to give you a question that is different than a multiple choice. I want to give you a performance-based question. A performance-based question, as CompTIA defines it, is one that simply is not multiple choice. It could be any other type of question. It could be a fill in the blank. It could be a matching question. It could be a question where we have to put things in a particular order. It might be a drag and drop question. If you go back to last month's study group, we did a command line prompt and had to solve a problem on the network. So it just depends, but all of the questions themselves, regardless of how they pose them, will all be from material that you have already studied for your exam. So as I often tell you, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. If you know the material, you'll be able to answer it regardless of how it's asked. So let's now look at a performance-based question that I have for you. This performance-based question asks you to associate an OSI layer to each description. And we have in this list 6 different descriptions, and I want you to give me an OSI layer for each one of these. So this is sort of a fill in the blank, if you will. I'm not even going to prompt you as to what the different options are, but I will tell you, regardless of what you choose, you want to lock in your answer here, professormesser.com/QA. Again, please no answers in the chat room, and please no hints in the chat room. Instead, we'll step through all 6 of these and you tell me what the OSI layers are. The first one is a device has been configured with an incorrect subnet mask. What OSI layer would be associated with that description? A firewall is blocking SMB to a device, but not SSH. I did have to kind of shrink these down a little bit, so you'll pardon a little bit of my grammar. An installation technician is attaching a fiber connector. What OSI layer is connected with that? An error message is complaining of an IP address conflict. Yeah, I've seen that before. A user has forgotten their password and locked their account. Also me. And finally, a network admin has enabled spanning tree protocol, which I did this week. I have such stories to tell over a network migration that I'm doing. But that is the 6 different descriptions. I want you to put in the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Tell me what OSI models are associated with those 6 descriptions. A device has been configured with an incorrect subnet mask. A firewall is blocking SMB to a device, but not SSH. An installation technician is attaching a fiber connector. An error message is complaining of an IP address conflict. A user has forgotten their password and locked their account. And a network admin has enabled spanning tree protocol. So I tried to take some real world issues that you might run into in your daily network administration tasks. A number of these issues I ran into this week, and I thought, well, let's make some questions out of this. And this is what I came up with. And this is where we really get to step through it. In the chat room, we're already fighting over what it could be, which I think is great. We will step through each one of these, and I will give you my impression on what I believe is the appropriate OSI layer that we are talking about with each one of these individual events. This should be a good one to step through. Maybe you know your OSI model, maybe you don't know your OSI model, but it is a very common way to communicate to other networking professionals so that everybody understands what you're talking about when you are saying you have a problem with OSI layer 1, OSI layer 2, OSI layer 3 or 4, 5 or 6 or 7. I don't think I gave too much away with any of those. Those are the 7 choices you have. There is not an OSI layer 8, but there probably should be. I guess technically there probably is. We just don't call it that. But 1 through 7 are the ones that you need to worry about for your Network Plus exam, which I think puts things into perspective. Go ahead and lock in your answers. You can find those or at least lock them in on the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and we'll be able to do that. In the meantime, if you do have questions or you think that one of these that we're going through is not something that you're understanding or you want more details, you can always leave us a question on the top of your screen at professormesser.com/QA. There's a little tab. You can flip over to the question side, and we'll be going through those questions in the second hour of the study group. So a lot of people going slow to lock in their answers on this one. I'm watching the number of submissions, although I'm not looking at the answers themselves right now. So I'm going to try to break this down a little bit more so that you can see the differences and what might be there. But we'll step through each one of these one at a time. Let's see how you did. Let's start with the very first one. And it is a device has been configured with an incorrect subnet mask. So anytime we're talking about something relating to an IP address, we're talking about a mask, a DNS entry, a default gateway, a router IP address, anything relating to IP is always going to be our network layer, layer 3 of the OSI model. So this is one where if somebody says, I think our problem here is a routing problem. I think our problem here is a subnet mask issue. I think our problem here is related to an IP address. This is all OSI layer 3. I think we have an OSI layer 3 problem. And immediately you should start thinking, oh, it might be an IP address. It might be a subnet mask. It might be a router configuration. Something at layer 3 is always relating to that TCP IP, or in this case, just IP. We'll talk more about TCP in a moment because we'll be talking about a firewall that is blocking SMB to a device, but not SSH. And if this is the only answer I think that we have here, that would be a little bit debatable because some firewalls operate at a particular layer of the OSI model. Other firewalls operate a completely different layer of the OSI model. In this particular case, when I was thinking about this entry, I thought I could have both of those in here. I really only squeezed in layer 4 because I assumed in this, well, I didn't assume, but I posited in my brain it could be one of 2 different firewalls, a firewall that operates at layer 4, which is the TCP or UDP port number, or it could be a next generation firewall that operates at layer 7. I just didn't have enough room to squeeze in layer 7 on this one, but I would accept both in this particular answer. Because when I wrote it up, I thought, let's narrow this down to just the TCP port numbers, but I felt that gave too much away. So I wanted to give you a little bit more flexibility and have a conversation about why it would be a layer 4 and why it would be a layer 7. Layer 4, of course, is a layer where we are talking about TCP port numbers or UDP port numbers, and many traditional firewalls operate at that layer. But these days, we have more modern firewalls that understand more about the traffic going over our network, and they can identify certain traffic types, such as server message block or secure shell. In fact, you can just simply tell the firewall, allow SSH, but block SMB. And what's nice about these next generation firewalls is they will block SSH or they will block SMB. It doesn't matter what port number SMB is using. They will allow SSH. It doesn't matter what port number SSH is using. The firewall recognizes if it's SSH and there's a policy that says allow SSH, I'm going to allow it, which is the great part there. So a very useful way to think about firewalling. In fact, if you get a question about firewalls, you should already be thinking, is this the traditional port-based firewall or is this a more modern next generation firewall? And you'll be able to make a better decision from that. So I'll accept layer 4 or layer 7. Both of you get full credit regardless of which one you chose. Next on your list, an installation technician is attaching a fiber connector. Well, anytime we're talking about fiber connectors, anytime we're talking about copper connectors, the cabling or the signal going across the fiber or the signal going across the cable, we're talking about the physical layer, layer 1 of the OSI model. So anytime we're saying, oh, I think I have a problem with my cable, I think I have a OSI layer 1 problem. That's what we're really saying when we describe this in OSI terms. Next on our list is an error message is complaining of an IP address conflict. So if you are looking at what we've done so far and the conversation that we've had about these things, this one should now be very apparent because, again, we're talking about IP addresses. In this case, an IP address used in multiple locations on the network simultaneously. And when that happens, we're dealing at the network layer. Again, if it's an IP address, a subnet mask, a default gateway setting, a DNS configuration, a static route, a dynamic route, anything dealing with IP, you're talking about OSI layer 3. Next on our list is what I did recently. A user has forgotten their password and locked their account. I really think that I remembered my password and I think they changed it. I think that's what happened. I'm going with that. Anytime you're dealing with a problem where the user is interacting with the system, the user is the one seeing something on their screen, they are interpreting a message they've received, that is something that operates at the application layer of the OSI model. So that is layer 7 of the OSI layer model. And then finally, last one on our list, a network admin has enabled spanning tree protocol. This one is a multi-step answer because we have to know what spanning tree protocol is, which of course you do need to know as part of your Network Plus studies. So if you know what spanning tree protocol is, you should be able to extrapolate from that, oh, that's what I would configure on a switch to prevent switch loops on my network where I'm connecting multiple switches to each other. Spanning tree protocol keeps my network up and running and prevents any of those loops from occurring. Well, if this is occurring on a switch, this is at that bridging layer, then we are operating at OSI layer 2. So now we have that data link layer, that MAC address layer, those things on a switch. If it deals with a switch and it deals with a bridge or it deals with something that makes its forwarding decisions based on the hardware or MAC address of a device or a frame, then we're dealing with layer 2 of the OSI model. So hopefully that's given you some perspective of OSI and how these things work. If you get questions on your exam about OSI, you can refer back to these quick shortcut sort of memorizations to understand what these are. And as you communicate with other network professionals in your career and you say, we're trying to connect these together, I think our problem's happening at layer 3, everyone in the room will know exactly what you're talking about. It's a very common language we use to be able to describe very broad understandings of what's happening on the network. So there's your OSI layer breakdown for the month and your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that's given you some places where you can look into doing maybe a little more studies, or maybe you got this one down. You can move to the next thing. In any case, I think we did a pretty good job at breaking down OSI from there. Let's do some more questions. I've got others here. This next question is a multiple choice question. We're popping back to those. And this multiple choice question asks, which of the following would be most associated with the I of the CIA triad? Would that be WPA2 encryption, QoS, digital signatures, MTUs, or VLAN IDs? again, kind of a two-step question, isn't it? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. The question again asks, which of the following would be most associated with the I of the CIA triad? Is it WPA2 encryption, QoS, digital signatures, MTUs, or VLAN IDs? There you go. So let's see if you know what the I. Of course, there's no I in idea. No, there is an I in idea. There's no I in I wish I knew what the answer to this question was. Nope, there's an I in that too. We'll have to figure out what you think the answer is. See if you, obviously this multi-step question, first we have to know what the I is. And then if we know what the I is, how do you apply that I towards this answer? There's too many I's. I'm saying I too much. I'm saying I so much that I'm now worried about how many times I'm saying I. So we'll stop doing that for a moment, for just a second, and figure out where to go from there. There is a little bit more that we can break down in this question. So if you think about it, a lot of folks in the chat room also talking about that CrowdStrike issue from last week, which I think a lot of people are jumping to a lot of conclusions about this one. I'll give you my opinion in the after show if you care. And if anyone really bothers at this point. I don't do a lot of those in the news kind of videos. I'm not that kind of YouTuber. So you're not going to see a lot of those. There's plenty of places you can go and watch YouTube videos of people talking about the CrowdStrike app hack. But there's some of this I think we're jumping to a lot of conclusions on. And we'll have to see how that kind of focuses in on these things. From what I've seen and what I've worked with, and of course, as many of you know, worked formerly for a next generation firewall company. I saw a lot of big companies. I saw a lot of their security setups. I knew a lot of the people in some of these big companies. And of course, I worked for a manufacturer that published their own hourly, in some cases, updates to these definition files. And I guarantee you a lot of people are looking at that process over this past week to figure out how to make it better, stronger, and faster. Let's see how you did with this one. This question asks, which of the following would be most associated with the I of the CIA triad? Would it be WPA2 encryption, QoS, digital signatures, MTUs, or VLAN IDs? What did you answer? 75% of you answered digital signatures, a pretty strong number. 11% said WPA2 encryption, so we got double digits there. And then it drops down to 7% for QoS, 4% for VLAN IDs, and less than 1% for MTUs. So this is where we need to focus our efforts, which is first on the CIA triad. CIA, and we've called this different names through the years. At some point, we thought we would call it the IAC triad. We tried different names because obviously the United States, the CIA is a very well-known three-letter acronym for the Central Intelligence Agency. And this has nothing to do with the Central Intelligence Agency. This is not a governmental question. But the CIA triad is a combination of three different security principles. They are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You'll often see the CIA triad, because there are three of them, written in a triangle. I know. It's we really went on a really big bender there to figure out how are we going to present this on the screen. Well, we'll do what everyone else does and show you this in the triangle form. And indeed, all of these three things do work together. So it is kind of important that we show there is a relationship between all of them. The C part is confidentiality, keeping this data private, keeping it secure, making sure other people can't see it, making sure only the right people can see it. That's an important part of security. The I in the CIA triad is integrity. Integrity, where you want to be sure that somebody can't change information on the network without you knowing about it. And that in some cases, you could even figure out where this particular piece of information came from through the integrity part. But a lot of that also is focused on the last part of A, because none of this works if we don't have a network that's up and running, if the systems are not operating. So we want to be sure that we have availability as well. This is a difficult, that's probably one of the more difficult arms of the CIA triad. Indeed, we can have a very secure network and it's confidential. We can make sure that all of the information that we are sending across the network is being sent across with no changes with the integrity. But then we have to make sure the network stays up and running. We have to make sure the systems continue to operate. We want to be sure that everything is still working. Looking at you, CrowdStrike. That's the I part and the A part and the C part all working together. But that A part, it'll get you every time, won't it? So that is, we said we need to know the I part. The integrity part is the I part. So if you wanted to hash some data or use data hashing to verify that a file has not been changed, that's a great way to check integrity. Digital signatures also perform a similar function along with additional capabilities, but they are certainly focused on the integrity part of it. And of course, if you have things like certificates and non-repudiation, those are all based on the integrity arm of the CIA triad. So one of the things you'll notice in this list is digital signatures. And of course, that was one of your available options, digital signatures. 75% of you chose that one. You got it absolutely right. That is the right answer. Digital signatures is certainly associated with the integrity part of the CIA triad. We also have WPA2 encryption. If we had to put that into one of these categories, I believe that would be where we would put it into the confidentiality part of the CIA triad. So if I had said most associated with the C of the CIA triad, WPA2 encryption would probably go there as well. QoS, maybe we could put that in the availability section because we want to make sure that our applications continue to work properly, but we're able to provide some type of prioritization of the traffic, keep the network up and running, keep the applications flowing properly. But it does not fit into the integrity part of the triad. VLAN ID, more of an administrative type function, that would certainly go into the availability side, but has nothing to do with integrity. And then lastly, the MTUs, the maximum transmission unit size. MTUs, probably availability there as well. It's not a security feature. It doesn't provide confidentiality. There's no integrity aspect of it, but it could be very important for making sure these applications work properly. So I would put it into the availability side. I've now created sort of a brand new performance-based question. I'll bring that up in a number of months where we have to decide what part of the CIA triad does this thing fit into. See, I've got that. Lori, make sure you email that to me so I can remember that for later. It's hard to come up with some of these ideas. We do them on the fly sometimes. You were here. You were part of it. So if you answered digital signatures, 75% of you got that one spot on. Absolutely correct. Well done. Make sure you understand the CIA triad if you're going to be working towards your certification. We do have a video on this on the N10-008 is in section 4.1 CIA triad. Let's do another question. Got another one for you. This next question asks, all network flows for an application are within the same data center. Which of the following would best describe these traffic flows? Would they be east-west, SD-WAN, single mode, unicast, or stratum? These are all things we should know for our Network Plus, but only one fits this question that asks, all network flows for an application are within the same data center. Which of the following would best describe these traffic flows? Would it be east-west, SD-WAN, single mode, unicast, or stratum? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen. Go to professormester.com/QA and lock in your answer. I'm hoping for a big number here. I think this is one we really should all know. Is it a gimme? I don't know if it's a gimme, because all of these are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. They all have something to do with traffic flows. But what do we do? How do we know? We'll have to figure it out as we step through it. I won't give anything away yet, but we will let you know what the answers are in just a moment. Lock in your answer by visiting the link on your screen. Go to professormester.com/QA and lock it in to see how well you know these terms. This is probably another one of those terms that becomes very helpful when you're in the meetings and people are talking about the SD-WAN and the single mode and the unicast and the east-west and the stratum and they're going through the list of these things and you're trying to figure out, what are they talking about? What are they referring to? Well, that's what you need to know what they're referring to. You don't have time to Google this stuff, which is another thing people often say, I'll just Google it. I don't have to know. I'll just Google it. Well, you could pretty much say that for everything, couldn't you? How do you dress yourself in the morning? I'll just Google it. I don't need to know. How do we drive this car? Hand me the Google. We'll figure it out. At some point, you have to learn it. And all of these things are important for you to learn for the exam objectives. So that exam could possibly ask you about any of these. Let's see how well you do with this one. It asks, all network flows for an application are within the same data center. Which of the following would best describe these traffic flows? Are they east-west, SD-WAN, single mode, unicast, or stratum? Let's find out what you chose. 72%, another strong number, say east-west is the answer. We have 9% that say unicast, 8% say SD-WAN, 4% for single mode, and 4% for stratum. So traffic flows, especially in a data center, can be a bit of a challenge to figure out where traffic is going from where to where. It's one of the biggest challenges we have as network professionals is understanding how to troubleshoot an application that is traversing these networks. And if there is traffic that starts in the data center and it terminates or ends in the data center, because usually that's the way things work. It's usually a point-to-point, one device communicating to another device oftentimes. And if it is in the same data center, we often refer to that as east-west traffic. A little different than if traffic is starting in the data center and going outside of the data center, or vice versa. It's coming from the outside and it's coming inbound into your data center. We refer to that as north-south traffic. So here is a very simple block diagram. You've got an internet connection coming into a data center. You've got these core switches. These appear to be layer 3 switches that we have in the core of the network. We've also got single switches, maybe top of rack switches that we have with a bunch of imaging servers, directory servers, web servers, file servers, other services in this particular data center. And if we are sending traffic that is maybe on an image server and we're sending it out to the internet, that's north-south traffic. So you can think about this diagram when you're trying to figure out north and south, because it certainly fits into where you would see north and south on a map, for example. But if we are communicating from a file server to an image server, all within the same data center, it is indeed east-west traffic. That's what you chose. 72% of you anyway chose east-west traffic, and you got it absolutely right. That is the right answer. SD-WAN, that is software that is able to determine where to send information across a wide area network based on the application that you're using. So this is one where I can have services in the cloud and I don't have to have a single WAN link back to my corporate office. SD-WAN can transmit that communication to where it needs to go because the cloud is changing all the time. This is effectively our newer version of a wide area network that is very knowledgeable of how the cloud operates. We have unicast, which describes the way traffic is sent over a network. Point-to-point communication between one device and another is unicast. Broadcast is traffic sent to all of the devices on the network. And of course, multicast traffic is sent to groups of devices on the network. In this case, this has nothing to do with traffic flows within the same data center, really describes better traffic flows between two devices regardless of where they happen to be. So that's not the answer we were looking for. Single mode describes a type of fiber, so it has nothing to do with traffic flows within a data center, although certainly some of the traffic could be traversing a single mode fiber. Of course, it might not be either. Could all be copper in the data center. And of course, stratum is a technology describing the time synchronization, especially as it is associated with NTP, the network time protocol. Stratum describes the exactness of a clock, how precise a clock might be to the actual time of day. And in this case, that has nothing to do with data flows in the same data center. The answer is indeed 72% of you said east-west. You're spot on. That is the right answer, and you got that one absolutely correct. Well, as you can tell already, there's a lot of information on this Network Plus exam and even the new Network Plus exam. There's so much to know about this. We talk about protocols, port numbers, the OSI model, the CIA triad. We've got subnetting that's in here. There is all kinds of details, and you have to know all of this before you walk in to take your exam. Now, of course, I highly recommend you watch my videos. My Network Plus course, for example, is 93 videos and over 14 hours of content. And if you are working towards your Network Plus, I want you to watch every single one of those. I want you to go through all 14 hours, but I understand not everybody has that kind of time. Not everybody is able to go through all of those. So one of the things that I have done is take all of the information from my videos and I put them into a set of course notes. So if you are familiar with my N10-008 videos, you know they start off with the OSI model. There it is, whole page on the OSI model. Got a breakdown of encapsulation and decapsulation, the breakdown of the different layers and how these protocols are associated in the OSI model, what these TCP headers look like, what the different flags are within each one of these. These are all things we have to know, and we're only into the first part of this exam. The course notes have everything you need to know inside of them. There's pictures, there's graphics, there's charts, there's tables, and there's all the text that you would see from the exam. Also have a flavor of this for the N10-009 as well. Make sure you choose the right one on the website. Slightly different. You'll see that some of the topics are different. They've been moved around, but some of the information is the same. You just want to be sure that you have the right version of any of your study materials. So if you're studying for the N10-008 exam, you'll want the N10-008 course notes. If you want the N10-009, you better be studying ready to take the N10-009. Both of these course notes are also available in physical form. That's right. We have actual printed books. This is one that they are identical, of course, to the digital versions. So same information, same screen, same slides, same view, but printed in full color and available in a perfect bound, that type of soft cover binding. And it's available on my website. If you purchase the physical version, you get access to the downloadable digital version for free immediately after purchase. So although you do have to wait for this to be delivered in the mail, you will have access to all of that information immediately so that you can start working and use those PDFs everywhere you happened to go. So plenty there to step through. If you want to know more about those, go to my website, professormesser.com, choose the link at the top to choose the N10-008 or the N10-009. Let's do some more questions. That's what you're here for. So let's do some more of them. The next on our list is this question that asks, which of the following would best describe the hardware address of an access point? Would that be ESSID, VLAN ID, IBSS, BSSID, or SSID? There's a lot of IDs in here. Which of the following would best describe the hardware address of an access point? Would that be ESSID, VLAN ID, IBSS, BSSID, or SSID? You know, if there's one thing that I just can't get enough of on this exam, it's the abbreviations. Oh boy, there are abbreviations on this exam. I think we do a really good job in networking of making new abbreviations all the time. I know there's a lot of abbreviations and acronyms and things you need to know for the A+. There's a lot of acronyms for the Security Plus, but there's just a ton of acronyms in networking. Compounded, of course, by all of these protocols we use. Of course, across our network, there's hundreds or even thousands of protocols, depending on how you count them, and each one of them has a different name. And we don't say the name, we use the abbreviation, we use the acronym every time. So the STP for Spanning Tree Protocol, certainly the HTTP, we've got the ESSID, the VLAN ID, the IBSS, the BSSID, and the SSID. Got a lot of IDs in that one. And we could keep going with the abbreviations. Those acronyms are just a lot to go through. But we need to know this one because maybe you're setting up an access point. Maybe you need to configure something associated with the hardware address. And somebody says, oh, on this access point, what is the... And there's the answer to your question. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Tell me what you think the answer for this one happens to be. We'll kind of break it down from there. This might be a good one to understand. A lot of acronyms. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, which of the following would best describe the hardware address of an access point? Is it ESSID, VLAN ID, IBSS, BSSID, or SSID? There's a lot to go through there. What did you choose? Well, let's find out. We'll click the button. We're closing it up, and we're not sure. We're a little torn. We did not get a majority on this one, but the plurality of you at 39% said it's an SSID. 30% of you say it's a BSSID. 18% say it's an ESSID. ID. Whew. Now we go into single digits. IBSS got 8%. VLAN ID only got 2%. So let's talk. The two on our list that came in number 1 and number 2 are SSID and BSSID. And wouldn't you know it, I've got a slide that talks about those two things. The SSID, the Service Set Identifier, is what that stands for. SSIDs are effectively the wireless network. So, you know, when you bring down the list of available wireless networks, you're trying to connect to the guest network, and you bring down the list, and there's 20 networks listed on the screen. That's 20 SSIDs. So the technical term for each one of those is a Service Set Identifier. Why we just can't say that's the wireless network name, but we don't. We call it the Service Set Identifier, which gives us a better chance to use abbreviations. We stick those acronyms in there. There's also this concept of being able to communicate across multiple access points, especially if you are in a very big building. Maybe you're across a campus, and you notice as you're moving from building to building, or you're moving from floor to floor, you're still on the same wireless network that you were on when you were in the lobby of the building. Well, that's because they have created a configuration across all of their access points where the SSID remains the same, even though you may be moving from one access point to another, or from one BSSID to another, which is a basic service set identifier. The basic SSID is the one that identifies the physical hardware address of the access point. So here's an example of an SSID where the network name is SGC1. That's the wireless network name that we would see in the list. When we pulled down the list of available networks, when we looked at it on our phone, we would see SGC1 and we could join that network. And if we were close to this particular access point, we would be connecting to that SSID using the BSSID, which is the physical access point itself. And of course, there could be many different access points, and each access point has a different BSSID. That's how we know we are on a different access point and moving from one access point to another. So there is the difference between an SSID and a BSSID. Now, if you are moving from one access point to another across all of these, it's more of an ESSID configuration. So you get into a much larger, broader configuration of access points. We don't even often configure them this way. I think a lot of the access point configuration front ends that you would use, regardless of the manufacturer, in some cases kind of hide some of these things from us. So it will say on the screen, what do you want the name of the network to be? Instead of asking you, what is the SSID? Which I think is a better way to ask, quite honestly. The problem is when you start looking at a packet capture, some type of wireless analysis tool, those are going to be important because they will give you the SSID, BSSID, ESSID, all of those will be listed there. So this is one of those times where in this case, BSSID is what we were hoping to find. Only 30% of us chose that one. So this is a good example of where it's not always what we all think. Sometimes it's maybe what a few of us might think. BSSID is the answer we were looking for between those three. IBSS and VLAN ID obviously don't apply here. They're not part of the wireless network configurations, but at least not 802.11. So in this particular case, when we had to choose between those three, I think you were picking between the right three. We got really close on this one. We just need a little bit more work on SSID, BSSID, and ESSID. And I will tell you, those are also topics you'll find on both the N10-008 and the N10-009. So you're set either way for that particular question. Let's do another question. I've got one. Of course, I've got another question. Here's the next one on our list. It asks, a network administrator is remotely power cycling a router. Which of the following are they using for this task? Are they using BGP, PDU, 802.1q, IPS, or load balancer? It's got to be one of these, right? Let's see how we do with this question that asks, a network administrator is remotely power cycling a router. Which of the following are they using for this task? Is it BGP, PDU, 802.1q, IPS, or load balancer? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen and go to professormesser.com and lock in your answer. See if you know what those answers are. This might be a good one to kind of break down. We should know what all of these are because all of these topics are listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. Something I like to do with these questions is give you a chance to not just know what the right answer is, but know why the wrong answers were wrong. And indeed, we kind of get more out of the questions that way because on your exam, you might get a question about any of these 5 different answers. So it's important to know what these all are. I often tell folks as they're going through this live stream, if you don't recognize a term or you feeling that you don't know it well enough, make a note so that you can go back to that term and know it exactly the right amount for your exam. See if you happen to know this one and lock it in. I want to give you a couple more seconds to go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a network administrator is remotely power cycling a router. Which of the following are they using for this task? Are they using BGP, PDU, 802.1q, IPS, or load balancer? Let's hit the button. We got a button here. There it is. Hit the stop button and see how you did. 44% say PDU, 22% say BGP, 11% say 802.1q, 10% say IPS, and 10% say load balancer. One of the few times that every answer is double digits. So we are well distributed across all of these, although we can see that PDU has twice the number of correct answers or answers there than the next highest, which is 22%. It's 44 versus 22. So if we went with the plurality of you that said PDU is the right answer, you're probably all pretty good shape because PDU is the right answer. It's in this case, not a protocol unit. This is a protocol data unit. In this case, it's a power distribution unit. We get into this all the time in networking, don't we? Where an STP is its spanning tree protocol or shielded twisted pair. Well, it's the same scenario where we have PDU in this case is referring to a power distribution unit. So that is exactly the one we would like to use, but you do have to know what the acronym means to be able to answer the question. So make sure you do step through them and know these. This is a PDU. In fact, that's the PDU I'm using right now as you're watching me. I've just got this old APC PDU that I've had forever, and it just runs like a champ. It has a web-based front end. It allows me to turn on and turn off any of those links. You can see it's got an Ethernet link right here at the top where I plug in my Ethernet connection. It goes as fast as, you won't believe this, 100 megabits per second. 100 megabits per second. So high speed. I will be upgrading this soon. Well, or maybe not. In Florida, we're always upgrading our PDU eventually because they'll get hit by lightning and we'll need a new one. But whenever the rains are coming through, I always unplug. So the next one I get will probably be a Ubiquiti PDU. It'll be a little bit newer. It has USB-C connections on it. It's got regular power connections. But at the moment, this one runs great. I really like it. It has been, you can find them relatively inexpensively on the eBay. This one was probably pulled out of somebody's corporate network. I got it used. So I paid relatively speaking, I paid very little. I think new, these are like $600. They're pretty expensive because they go into an enterprise. So the price is high. But on the eBay, you can usually get them for $100, somewhere around there. Pretty good. So I can sit here on my desk and I can turn on and off different parts of that. When I was starting this up today, I accessed my PDU. I said, turn it all on. And suddenly the lights came on. The system started up. We started spinning up the reactor. There's a lot going on with PDUs, but that was the answer we were looking at because I wanted to power cycle my router. We're going to use a power distribution unit, and 44% of you got that one right. BGP is a border gateway protocol. It's a dynamic routing protocol, and it's one that is used in primarily internet connected locations. Doesn't have to be that way, but indeed it is an important protocol to use, but has nothing to do with power cycling a router. .1q, for those of you that are doing your VLANs and your trunking from switch to switch, you're already familiar with an 802.1q tagging standard. We often just call it tagging. Somebody mentioned the other day in our Discord that one of the questions I had on another study group talked about tagging, talked about no, it talked about trunking. And he said, I looked through the exam objectives and there's no mention in there of trunking. Why did you ask us about trunking? Because it doesn't ask you about trunking, but it does ask you about 802.1q. Trunking is a colloquialism. It's a non-technical or non-specific term that we apply to this. It's kind of a generic term, a bit of slang, if you will, in the networking world. The appropriate or at least technical flavor of what we call trunking is the standard created by the IEEE in their 802.1 committee, referred to as 802.1q, where Q is a capital Q. And sometimes you see it written as a lowercase q. They are wrong. And I think we should all point at them. Don't do that. But it is important to know that the capital Q means it's a standard. The lowercase q means it's a change to an existing standard. I think that's the way it works. IPS, intrusion prevention system, could be other things, but let's go with that in this case. 10% of you chose that, but an IPS is not going to allow us to power cycle a router. And then a load balancer, which if you're on my website right now, you are being balanced. Do you feel a little more zen today? You're being balanced because you're going to one of more than one web servers. And the load balancer is figuring out where you need to go to be able to access our website. And again, doesn't help you in power cycling a router, however. The thing in this list that best applies is indeed the PDU. 44% of you got that absolutely correct. Now, if you think that you've already got your certification or one of these certifications, you need to renew your certification, and you want to use a continuing education unit credit, a CEU, to be, again, an acronym, to be able to renew your certification, I would love to send you an email that has been digitally signed by me and certifies that you were here for a 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. If you would like to receive that email, you must follow these steps. If you do not follow these steps, you do not get the email. The steps are, you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, you click the Contact Us link. In the Contact Us link, put your name. It asks you to put your email address twice. Put in a subject line of July 2024 Network Plus, and in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, PDU BGP IPS. There you go. I have to work really hard to make these unique every month. PDU BGP IPS. 3 words or 3 groups of acronyms that are these not acronyms. There's a whole set of questions I get about that. But put those 3 terms in there and send that message to me. It takes me about a week to turn these around, but I will send you an email back and it will certify that you are here and give you that 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. Again, go to the top or the bottom of the website, click Contact Us, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, put July 2024 Network Plus. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, PDU BGP IPS. Got all 3 of those. I think I did it right the second time as well. If not, get really close to that and we'll be fine, I think. I'm the one looking through these. I'm the one interpreting whether we got it right or not. I go through these manually just to make sure, and then it's sent off to you. So that's why it takes a little bit of time to turn these around sometimes, because it's a sort of a motivational thing from my perspective. Got to get it ready to go, collect them all up, and then send them out in a batch. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's fit another question in, though. I think we should get one more into this list. Our next question is this one. We'll end strong, everybody. This question asks, before connecting to a wireless network, a user must provide their email address. Which of the following would best describe this process? Is this geofencing, captive portal, wireless isolation, MAC filtering, or QoS? It's got to be one of these, right? We'll figure out what this is. The question again asks, before connecting to a wireless network, a user must provide their email address. Which of the following would best describe this process? Is it geofencing, captive portal, wireless isolation, MAC filtering, or QoS? If you think you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. We'll figure out what this happens to be. This should be a good one. and figuring out where to go with this is a good place to go. Let's see if you're familiar with these topics. I think this is probably one of those more definitional type questions. And that's part of our goal with these study groups, is to get you familiar with the topics. And this is certainly one of those that hopefully, but we've all been through this, haven't we? Where we've connected to a wireless network, and before we get access, there's something we have to do, like provide our email address. So it's useful if we know what those things happened to be. So lock in your answer. Go to professorbesser.com/QA. Tell me what you think the right answer is. And of course, in the meantime, if you want to submit a question for the after show, you can also submit that from that same link, professorbesser.com/QA. Be able to certainly plug in what you think that answer is. We'll see how well you do. Let's lock this. We're kind of slow getting into this one, so I'm wondering what we're going to choose. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, before connecting to a wireless network, a user must provide their email address. Which of the following would best describe this process? Would it be geofencing, captive portal, wireless isolation, MAC filtering, or QoS? What did you choose? Let's find out. You chose, wow, strong. 83% of you say the answer is captive portal, single digits for everything else. 4% for geofencing, 4% for wireless isolation, 5% for MAC filtering, and 1% for QoS. This is sort of the problem that you would run into, is if you are on these wireless networks, you may be asked to authenticate in some way, either to agree to some of the things that are associated with these, with using this network. Maybe we do have to fully authenticate. Maybe we have to provide a username and password. Sometimes that happens. But the process of this popping up, recognizing, wait a second, you're not supposed to be here yet. You have to get access. I'm going to be the gatekeeper. You have to be able to get through the gate. And this gatekeeper in this particular context is called a captive portal. This is a captive portal. So it makes you either click OK that you agree to the end user license agreement. You have to input a username and password. You have to do something so that the captive portal will allow you access. And if you do the right thing, you provide the right information, the captive portal is going to allow you access to the network, and you will be able to use that network for a certain amount of time. So we see this all the time. Maybe it allows you on for 24 hours, and then after 24 hours, suddenly you can't communicate on that network, and it pops open the screen again and says, if you want to be here another 24 hours, you have to do this again. And you have to go through the process one more time. So it's another way to allow or disallow access to that particular network. And captive portal, as 83% of you already chose, got that one absolutely correct. There really was no question. Of course you got that one. Captive portal. We're so familiar with the technology these days. Captive portal is exactly the answer we were looking for. Now, why wouldn't it be some of these others? Let's see if we can look through this list. We know that 4% of you said geofencing. Geofencing is a process where the device or the software that you're using will recognize where you are, and it will change how it operates based on your physical location. Effectively fences you into a specific geography with geofencing. We also have wireless isolation. That is kind of an industry generic term. Different manufacturers call this different things, but wireless isolation is often a feature you can enable on your access point that will allow people to use the access point to communicate to the internet, but it would not allow someone on the access point to communicate to someone else on that same access point. That protects everyone on that wireless network. We often see that in things like coffee shops, at a hotel, where you're able to communicate to the internet, but you can't see anybody else out there. Although I've been in plenty of hotels where I can see Bob's MacBook Pro. I can connect to Bob's MacBook Pro, allegedly. I could allegedly see that there was a share drive, and I could even potentially, had I clicked on it, seen that particular PowerPoint that they were working on, allegedly. But it was there, it was open. So you don't want to configure your network that way. You want to be sure that you've enabled wireless isolation to protect everyone on the wireless network. MAC filtering does exactly what the name says. It will allow you to allow or prevent traffic through a particular network segment based on a media access control address, or as we often say, the MAC address, the hardware address of that device. And then we've got QoS, quality of service, a way to prioritize applications and protocols on our network, which has nothing to do with connecting to a wireless network. In this case, by far, the folks that got that answer of captive portal, 83% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Lots to go through there. A lot of ways to do captive portals. Hopefully, you'll be able to use some of those and play around with them. There's lots of really neat things you can do with captive portals. We also want to let you know, we've been talking all this time about the exam objectives. And did you get it off the exam objectives? And have you read through the exam objectives? And if you're thinking, what is he talking about, exam objectives? You need to go get yourself a copy of these official exam objectives that are published by CompTIA. They are free to download, and they will tell you everything you need to know to pass this exam, or at least give you a checklist of everything you need to know to pass this exam. You have one way that you can get there is through a link I have on my site. Simply visit professormesser.com/objectives. Or if you like, go to your favorite search engine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. It'll be the first thing that pops up, I'm pretty sure. This is a great checklist to use before you start your studies. It's probably even more valuable at the end of your studies because you can use it to check off that you know the things that you need to know for this exam. So make sure you get your hands on these. It's a free service. This is something unique to CompTIA because Microsoft doesn't do this, Cisco doesn't do this, Red Hat doesn't do this. So other companies don't provide this level of detail. And this is really an extremely helpful way to help you with your studies. And as I mentioned, absolutely free. Can't beat the price. professormesser.com/objectives, or just simply search for CompTIA exam objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. Our next Network Plus study group is currently scheduled for August the 14th. But as you can see in this map, this view, this calendar of what August looks like, it is a little different than our normal study group. August is just a mess. It's just all over the place. So I would highly recommend that if you want to keep track of when the next live event is going to be, or maybe you're watching this after August and you're wondering when is the next live event going to be, you can always find out by visiting our event calendar. Go to professormesser.com/calendar, or you can go to the events channel in our Discord. Both of those are always updated immediately. As soon as I know there's a change, I put it in there. So you are the second one to know besides myself. You'll know immediately anytime I make those changes. Hopefully there won't be too many of those changes to go through, but it might be something to keep in mind. Come on back in August to do that. Now we have another Security Plus study group this month here in July. So if you wanted more for July, this is Tuesday that we are on right now here in my part of the world. On Thursday in my part of the world, just 2 days from now, we're going to do our Security Plus study group. You're more than welcome to come back on the 25th at 12 noon Eastern time, where I have that study group. And of course, all of those are listed as well at professormesser.com/calendar. Well, the Q&A in this first hour is done, but there's more Q&A to come in the after show, where I take your questions. You can submit them at any time by visiting professormesser.com/QA. Don't forget about our Network Plus course notes, our success bundles, and all of our study materials on our website at professormesser.com. We've also got the discounted vouchers. And remember, if you're in the US and Canada, you can get those discounted vouchers and get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook for free. That's at professormesser.com/vouchers. And if you want to find us on social media, you type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place you want to find us, /Discord, /YouTube, /LinkedIn, /Facebook, /Twitter, /Instagram, or just pick something. See if I'm there, / whatever it is. I'm probably not there. But those are the most useful ones you see on your screen. Those are the ones you'll find me. Those are great ones to go to. And that's where we'll probably be in Discord after we're done here. So if you haven't joined our Discord, it's a great place to hang out with others and learn more for your Network Plus studies. Well, I think that's a good place to stop for the first hour. Stick around. In just a few seconds, we will be coming back and figuring out more details with questions you ask of me. Thank you so much for being here in this first hour. We do so much enjoy putting these questions together and see how you do it. It's always interesting every single time. And hopefully we're able to learn something at the end of this. We got a lot more to come. Stick around. We'll see you in the after show. Thanks for joining us. We'll We'll see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. Okay, let me get a sip of something to drink. Sorry, chat room. I am not on the /Tinder. I'm not on those things. Those days are far behind me. No, I'm locked in, folks. I don't have to do a /Tinder, thankfully. There's no /Hinge on the Professor Messer website. We're good. We're all right. So, yeah, I'm married up, so I'm not about to lose that one. That's, am I old enough to drink? One must wonder. It's hard to tell. Hard to tell. Let's look now at getting some questions locked in. I might as well put the link back up because that's the way we do it. We want to be able to get these questions submitted. And one of the ways that you could do that is right here. You can submit them at any time by visiting that link. Your question's not going to pop up on the screen, but it will be submitted behind the scenes. I'm going to sift through them as we go and see if I can find some things that you might be interested in talking about. Submit those at the link you see on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and I will see if we can get through all of those. Boy, there are a lot of questions already waiting for me. So I should probably just stop talking about where the link is at this point. I think we'll be able to get through a number of these. You can also submit your questions anonymously, so you do not have to say your name or put your name, but you're more than welcome to do so because I have those there. And we can kind of break those down and see these different options that are available. There are a number of questions in here. There's not a specific one I'm going to put up on the screen, but there are a number of questions that you have asked in the chat room over this last hour. And there's some questions that have been put into the list of questions for us today that deal with the N10-009. Let's first talk about the N10-009. This was obviously a version of the Network Plus exam that was released on last month, on the 20th of June. So it's available. If you wanted to take that exam right now, you could. I'm not sure I would recommend you doing that because there are a number of challenges. Let's first talk about where you would get content from. And then after that, we should probably talk about what's different. The first problem, whenever a new exam comes out, I generally do not talk about moving immediately to this new exam. That's because it takes a number of months to get a good list of available study materials on the market. Of course, we have a number of our videos already out. Our course notes are available. You'll find some books out there. You'll find some videos out there, but you won't find the amount that you have currently available with the N10-008. And that's why if I was starting my studies right now for Network Plus, I would probably make the N10-008. That's the one I would study for. But you have a choice as to which exam you would like to study for. And a number of you have asked, what's the difference between the N10-008 and the N10-009? So here is a good example of that. Got to have a good chart if you want to be able to make that clear. The N10-008 is the big circle on the left side of the screen. The N10-009 is the somewhat smaller circle on the right side of the screen. The reason the N10-009 is a smaller circle is because these circles are sized based on the total number of exam objectives. So these are the individual bullets of exam objectives. You can see, for example, in the N10-008, there are 590 objectives. On the N10-009, there are 430 objectives. And I got to tell you, I measured it out exactly to 590 pixels and 430 pixels. So these are to scale intentionally to be able to do that. Now, the great thing about this is that if you are thinking of moving from one to the other, although certainly wouldn't recommend it, but when's the last time you listen to me anyway? So that's fine. In fact, in some cases, it's advisable. I think I gave you a good example of this. What if you knew you weren't going to get through this by December? People have sent me messages and said, they've said, which do I take? I said, take the N10-008. And they say, yeah, but I won't be ready by December. And I said, take the N10-009. So they were smart to not listen to me for that first answer. The N10-009 would have worked better for them. But you'll notice that if you do have to switch between the two, there's a big section in the middle that's the same. So about 2/3 of this exam are, from a exam objective perspective, identical between both of these. Now, because the N10-009 is smaller, it's not 2/3 of the N10-008. It's just 2/3 of the N10-009 are identical. So that's something to think about. If you're studying for the N10-008, there's still quite a few objectives, 300 objectives that are exclusive to the N10-008. You studied all 300 of those for no good reason because they don't show up on the N10-009. There are 1/3 of the topics on the N10-009 are brand new. So that's another good thing to think about, and an important thing to consider is that if you're studying from materials that are marked N10-008 and you go walk in to take the N10-009, 1/3 of the exam is going to be something you've never seen before. And you're going to wonder, where did that question come from? It came from this blue section. It's exactly where that came from. So 140 of those topics, of those objectives, are brand new that you don't see on any of the 008. So like most things, whenever we are converting or moving, like most of these CompTIA exams, when they're updated, there's always a change that takes place. And that's the change for this one. This is not unusual. This is not weird. This is not groundbreaking. I'm not excited about this at all. This is pretty normal. I think our very first Network Plus course that we did might have been the N10-004, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is about our 5th or 6th course. And it's been about the same type of transition every time. So although on the screen it looks like this could be relatively dramatic, it isn't. It's pretty much the same thing we run into every time. So I am not concerned about that at all, but I do tell people, and I think it's an important thing, always study from materials that match the version of the exam you're planning to take. Always, always, always study from materials that match the version of the exam you're planning to take. So important. I said it twice. So make sure of that is true. Their challenge right now, of course, is that there's not a ton of materials available for the N10-009, but there are some. And of course, we have our course, our very first section of our course is already done. I edited a couple more videos today. We should see those come out very soon. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell so you're notified when those are uploaded. We've got a lot more videos that we're shooting and editing, and we're just having the best time getting those ready for you. I really like the way the course has turned out. And so those will be up. You know, it won't take very long to get those done and make them available to you. And at that point, usually when we're about 3 months into a new exam, you'll start to even see us transition things on this side. So our daily pop quiz questions tend to be N10-009. Maybe about that point, we transition the monthly study groups into the N10-009. So you'll see in the title of these things, I put the version number so that you can keep track. So if you're ever looking at one of those pop quizzes or you're looking at a study group and you're wondering, which one is it? When both of them are available, you'll see me list out which one it's referring to. So there's no question. You'll know exactly what those topics are associated with. So hopefully that covers a number of your questions that you have about what is new, which one do I take, what do I study from? If you were taking it right now, which one would you take? There's a lot of those questions that we all have right now during this transition period. And that's the questions that hopefully are covered as we step through these. Let's go through some more of the questions. Again, you can submit these questions by going to professormesser.com/QA, and I will flip through all of these and see how we do with this. Let's go through some questions you have about the Network Plus timeframe and being able to work through these. This is a very common question. It sort of came up in the very beginning of the study group in the chat. I think it'd be worth talking about. We talk about it from time to time since it's a popular topic. It's from Alex C., who says, why would you choose to take the Network Plus versus the CCNA or vice versa? And there is as many people on the internet yelling about one as there is yelling about the other. Let me see if I can put this in context because I have taken both. I have familiarity with both. I've worked in the industry with people who have taken both of these, and I can kind of give you at least my perspective of someone who's been through the world of network administration and security and switching and routing and wide area networks and protocol analysis and network management, and give you a perspective of how both of these fit in the world. there will be people online, if you ask this question out to the internet, there will be people that yell at you that obviously this certification is so much better than getting this other certification. Why are you wasting time on this when you could be doing this? But nobody seems to ever ask, when somebody says, which of these is the one I should take or which of these is better, no one ever seems to stop and ask, what are you doing? What is your goal? What are you? Where are you today? What are you doing in technology today? And where do you want to be? Because that is an important question to be able to answer which one you would take, Network Plus or CCNA. And I'll first tell you, these are two very different exams. They are certifications designed for different part of your career. They are not interchangeable with each other, as many people will try to convince you of the case. It's not the case. They're not even close to being similar to each other in the way that they are presented and the information you're expected to know. And they're really designed to be very different. So let's step through them. First off, the Network Plus exam, as you're probably already familiar, is an entry-level certification exam. Its goal is to get you familiar with the terminology, with the underlying technologies we use in networking, to understand the basics of the protocols, so that you could be in a meeting with other network professionals and you could think to yourself, I know that word. Oh, they're talking about routing protocols. Oh, they're talking about configuring BGP. I know what that is. That's where you want to be. But Network Plus obviously doesn't put you at the prompt of a switch. It doesn't stick you at the prompt of a router and tell you to build out a network design. It's not what it's supposed to do. That is more of the world of the CCNA. CCNA is an abbreviation for the Cisco Certified Network Administrator. This is a Cisco exam. It focuses on Cisco products, but in reality, once you know any manufacturer's technologies, you can apply those same types of knowledge back to other technologies as well. So a lot of us coming up in the world worked on routers before there was a Cisco. Hard to believe. Was there ever a time before there was a Cisco? Yes, there was. And we still had routing and dynamic routing protocols. And we had next hops, and we had routing tables, and we had all the things to deal with routing. All those things we are very familiar with when it comes to routing, we did those. And a lot of people here, I worked on IBM routers, IBM bridges. I worked on, in fact, other people in the chat room, Bay Networks / Nortel / what they finally end up being. They went through 3 or 4 other names before they finally did that and finally got to where they were trying to be. Or where they ended up, I guess, and how things work in this industry. But once you understand routing tables, the routing table concept is the same for everything that uses a routing table. Once you understand BGP, the same BGP works on a Cisco router as works on a Palo Alto Networks firewall. The same BGP works the same on a third-party router, anything along those lines. So when you start getting into the specifics of designing a network, understanding the underlying protocols, it's one thing to know what spanning tree protocol does. It's something completely different to configure spanning tree protocol. And that is really the difference between Network Plus and the CCNA. Network Plus gives you the fundamentals of understanding these technologies. CCNA gives you a way to understand how to implement it in a Cisco environment. That's really, so CCNA is more of an intermediate level, sort of a lower intermediate level certification. I would put it in that category. It is a much harder certification than Network Plus, no question. And a number of topics on the Network Plus do not appear on the CCNA. So there will be things you learn on Network Plus that the CCNA simply won't teach you. So, and vice versa. There's a lot in the CCNA you don't cover on the Network Plus. So these are not interchangeable, sort of the point I'm trying to make with that. You also need to look at where you are in your career. If you are trying to get that first job in IT, having a CCNA may present you as being overqualified because it's an intermediate level certification. We don't want to put somebody on a help desk where you're learning the ropes of technology, where you're understanding now how Active Directory works, you're working through triage, you're troubleshooting day-to-day problems like people like me calling in and needing to reset your password. I would not want to hire somebody with a CCNA to fit in that seat because they're going to be bored in a month and they're going to quit. So why would I do that? So I think a lot of people think you should just jump into CCNA. That may not necessarily be the case. However, if you are working towards a position in a NOC, the Network Operations Center, a NOC is, usually see this with very large companies where they have a worldwide presence. They have a facility where they manage all of their networks from this one building. And to be able to do that, they have this network operations center, and there's often a lot of good entry-level positions there. They like people that are a little more knowledgeable on the network side. CCNA might help you there. So that's a case where CCNA may be a better choice for you to take than the Network Plus, because they might be looking for CCNA. Ultimately, look at the job postings for the positions that you are applying for. See what they are asking for. If they're asking for Network Plus, don't go out and get a CCNA. If they're asking for a CCNA, don't go out and get a Network Plus. Make sure you match what they're trying to do with that particular position. And I would say, as crazy as it may sound to many people, do not overqualify yourself for these positions. They will not hire you. They don't want to talk to you. It's a very big concern. As someone who was a hiring manager, I want to exactly match the requirements for this position so that I know the person who's coming in is perfectly fit for that particular job. And then we can teach them things as they go. And eventually they'll get bored and they'll go to the next thing. But we need to hire for what they are doing today. Have a perspective of what's there. That is the idea. The CCNA is relatively complex when you compare it to Network Plus. It is super Cisco-centric compared to, well, anything, because it's a Cisco exam, but the fundamentals are the same regardless whether it's a Cisco, a network, a Juniper, a Palo Alto Networks, whatever it happens to be. It does not matter. You will learn the fundamentals in one way or another, whether it's through Cisco, whether it's through other means. You will figure it out as you get through it. And that's one of the great parts about this industry, is that you don't have to focus on one single technology. There are a lot of options available to you, and you can choose which one of these would be the right one to use for you, Network Plus or CCNA. Let's keep going through the list that you have sent me with more questions. Let's see if we can find another one of these. We got a lot to flip through. So let's talk about these terms and how they fit. This is from Yo Mama. She's big. How big? We'll let you finish that one. Yo Mama says, should I learn scripting/coding to become a network engineer? Yes. We'll talk about what that is. If so, what language do you recommend? Let's talk about these terms first. Scripting/coding. These are terms we often combine together, and technically scripting is coding. Coding can be scripting, two things. But I think it's important to understand the terms first, and then we can talk about how we would use these terms. So first, let's talk about scripting. Scripting is a way to automate the things that we normally would do manually. So instead of manually going to a folder and copying files in that folder that end with a TXT extension and moving those TXT files to this other server, which that whole process now took me like 60 seconds for me to select all the text files and then to drag them and to drop them. That took me a minute. A scripting process can automatically go through that list, find the text files, transfer them over, and it's done in 2 seconds. So a significantly faster form to do these things that we would do manually. And what's nice about scripting, of course, is that it can be fired off automatically. It can wait for a certain set of things to occur and then and then fire itself off and perform that task. There's great capabilities in scripting, and it's a functionality that we in the industry, it's been around for as long as there's been computers. It's nothing new. It's nothing exciting. It's sort of the thing that really is a core piece of what we do as technologists, or it should be. We'll talk more about that in a moment. There's also this term about coding. And I want to be very clear, because if you talk to other people in the industry, if you watch the news, if you talk to people in government, they will tell you that they are enabling individuals within their community by helping them learn to code, and that everyone should learn to code. We should all learn to code. We should not all learn to code. Coding is if you want to take my definition of coding, coding is to create an application, to build out a series of interactive or non-interactive functions for building out a web-based application, an application that runs on your mobile device, an application that's an executable that runs in your desktop. It's building an app. It's building an application. And these are two sides of IT, if you will. I really separate them into two different categories of technology. The side where we are working with routers and switches and file servers and data centers and security and wide area networks and VLANs and VPNs, and we are keeping data safe. We are keeping data protected. We are managing the flow of traffic across these networks. We are connecting people to the internet. That is information technology. That is IT. There's another part of technology where we are writing code. We are building applications. We are creating front-end interfaces. We are all fighting about user interfaces. We are finding the most optimal way of where you click things on the screen. That side of technology, I'm putting into a very broad categorization of computer science. Computer science tends to focus on building these applications or building the hardware and software that we would use. So if you're building your own switch, you're on the computer science side. If you're writing your own iPhone app, you're on the computer science side. I consider that to be coding, and we're going to very broadly describe it as coding. So when you hear me talking about coding, I'm really talking about building an app. From the perspective of information technology people, we don't do coding. That's a completely different group of people with a completely different way to think. You can spend an entire career focusing on coding and optimizing and understanding and becoming proficient and an expert in the operation of coding. We spend an entire career understanding operating systems, security, networking, and all of the pieces that we have to know to be able to keep these systems running. But to be able to keep them running, we need to automate these processes in many ways. And that's where the scripting part comes in. If you were today, for example, wondering, you're not in IT or you've just started in IT and you're trying to figure out what would give me the best possible springboard to move up in my career. What are the skills that I would be able to use for the entirety of my IT career? What things could I do to make my life easier, to make it so that I can go home earlier in the day and spend more time doing the things I want to do? Then you need to learn how to do scripting. You need to learn automation. You need to understand orchestration. All of those terms are effectively similar to each other, but those are things where we are taking processes and we are automating them. This has become certainly most important during the world of cloud. Now that we have cloud-based technologies, scripting becomes even more important. So if you are starting into that world of IT, there's two places I would tell you to start. One would be if you are in a Windows-centric environment, then you need to learn as much as you can about scripting in PowerShell. PowerShell is the Microsoft shell that can be run inside of a Windows environment, and it focuses on being able to automate, manipulate, or make changes of some way to all aspects of the Windows operating system. PowerShell, incredibly powerful, as the name, it tells you right there. It's PowerShell, right? It's powerful, clearly, but it turns out it really is. PowerShell really is a shell that is powerful, and the more you know about how to write and implement scripts in PowerShell, the better of a network administrator you're going to be, the better of a Windows administrator you're going to be, and you'll be learning a series of skills that you will be able to apply to many aspects of technology. Now, if you are not in a Windows-centric environment, or you're thinking, I would like to extend this capability of automation into the world of Linux, Mac OS, the cloud, and other aspects, then you need to focus on Python. Python is the other good scripting language, the other good springboard that you could use to move us up. And I think if you are someone who is focusing on getting the foundational skills that you will be able to use for operating systems, networks, security, and indeed the rest of your IT career, those are two great places to start. I will tell you, I do a ton of scripting and automation in the Linux shell. So if you are familiar at all with Linux and you would like to automate Linux processes, I do a ton of Linux automation. I do a ton of automation in Mac OS. I've written scripts in Perl. They were awful, but they worked. So I don't want to hear it. If it works, how bad can the code be, right? And this is one of these things that really differentiates us in IT from our brethren over on the computer science side is we don't care how bad the code looks as long as it works. That's something you never want to show your code to somebody on the coding side because they'll just go crazy. It's like, you don't need to see that. This works. We're running this. It's fine. That's where we're going to focus. So I think those are good places to begin. If you're trying to learn how to automate, I'm not going to call it scripting. I'm not going to call it coding. If you want to automate these processes, that's what you need to learn how to do. Now, eventually, this brings us up to a type of job description that has never really met the requirements of the name, and that's DevOps. DevOps it was sort of a fancy schmancy buzzword we came up with a number of years ago when the cloud started really taking over. DevOps is a conglomeration of developer and operations. Two things that, by the way, should never touch each other. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. And as it turns out, they didn't. Turns out we wanted them to. And then we realized this was a horrible idea that really didn't do what we wanted it to do. And now it's turned into something kind of different. So let's talk about where we started with DevOps. I look forward to your cards and letters. Let's look where we started with DevOps. We thought, and if you look at practically any organization, the developers, the computer science people, work on the code. Then we got to get the code over into our production side. So the developers have an entire process where they hand over the code to the IT team, and then the IT team takes their instructions and puts them into the world of production. That's how it has worked forever. For many, many years, that's how we've done things. And we thought, what a waste that we're having to create this middle section where we're having to hand things off to a group of people that are responsible for uptime and availability. That's crazy. Let's take the developer and make them an operations person and sort of combine both of those into the same individual. Well, as it turns out, as you might expect, you can spend a lifetime honing your skills to be a good developer, and you could spend a lifetime honing your skills to be a great IT person. But there's no way to squeeze both of those things into the same person and be any good at either one of them. As it turns out, that's exactly what happened. Now, what we were really trying to do with DevOps, and ultimately where we've sort of evolved this and gotten to this point, where we really wanted this to shine is to automate the cloud. That's what DevOps was really designed to do, is take this concept of building out an entire application instance anywhere in the world with a click of a button, with a series of scripts, with infrastructure as code. We want to be able to throw that out into the cloud and boom, we've just with a wave of our hand, we've created web servers and database servers, and we've got all kinds of networking technologies. And we were able to do that simply by pushing a button, and we didn't even have to think about it. That's exactly what we want. That's exactly where the web and the cloud itself, that's where the cloud excels, is doing that. But of course, we have to come up with the processes to do that. It's a relatively complex process to wave your hand and suddenly an entire application infrastructure is running on a particular data center. So that's one that I tell people all the time, that if you can automate and you can apply that automation to the cloud, there's a lot of great jobs out there for you that are called DevOps, but it's really more about orchestrators. It's kind of what they are. It's kind of what we've turned the DevOps term into, but we still use the term DevOps, which is a fine term to use now that we all know that it's not developers, it's not operations, it's not combining these two together. The poor folks, the bean counters, thought this would be a great chance to save money. They were wrong, but the concept was right. Is let's orchestrate and make our cloud more flexible. Let's monitor the cloud. And if at any moment we feel like we need more resources, we can pop them up automatically. If at any moment we think we're using too many resources, we can tear them down. And we can do all of this behind the scenes. Nobody even knows we were building out more infrastructure or pulling the infrastructure down. And we could do this through the orchestration. We could do it through automation, using these scripts and using these now relatively well-established processes to be able to make all of this happen. That's what the DevOps folks are doing these days. And it's a tough position to be in. It's a hard position to be in, but it's one that I think if somebody was kind of focusing on the latest, most fancy, the cutting edge of the cloud, then you're going to want to get involved in that DevOps world and be able to be familiar with primarily Python and being able to understand the nuances of applications, operating systems, networking, and security. This is why it's so hard to find somebody good in that particular role, because you would already need to know these things. You can't just jump into a DevOps role. Oh, just got out of college. I'm going to go take a DevOps job. We're not going to let you touch anything yet. We're going to put you on the help desk first. You got to learn the operating system, then learn the network, then learn the security, then learn how the applications all talk to all of those, and then you're ready for DevOps. So that is my DevOps story. That's my story of scripting. That's where I think you should focus. If you're in Windows, go learn as much as you can about PowerShell. If you're anywhere else, go learn as much as you can about Python. Ideally, learn as much as you can about both of those, and you'll be able to springboard from there to practically anything. That is the world we live in. Let's go through some more questions. We've got some more. There were some questions earlier. I did want to kind of touch on this, that we're talking about CrowdStrike. And I didn't want to talk about what happened with CrowdStrike and why it was there and what they found. But let's talk about where I think people are maybe making a mistake, because right after that happened, I got a ton of people leaving comments on the videos that we've done on our Security Plus course on change control. And they said, well, here's a CrowdStrike. They didn't do good change control. Or did they? We don't know exactly yet. Ultimately, we know what caused the problems. For those that were sort of watching this and understanding, on Friday of last week, the world blue screened effectively. At least all major parts of the world blue screened. Many airlines, hospitals, government agencies, enterprises walked in that morning and all the machines had a Windows stop error on them with a message saying the CrowdStrike service caused this blue screen. And CrowdStrike is an EDR, this next generation, sort of a newer form of antivirus that we run in a lot of these enterprises, where we're focusing more on stopping malware and what it does, rather than stopping malware based on some type of signature, which we found is difficult enough to keep up with. But malware, as it operates, as we understand malware and the way it operates today, can do one of a number of things on your computer. So instead of trying to identify malware based on it knocking at your door, why don't we let it in? And if it tries to break the window, we go, oh, wait, you must be malware, and we stop it there. That's the basic idea of these EDR technologies. So one of the things that I looked at with this CrowdStrike problem was the software was updated. What we know is that the software updates itself, probably updates itself very often with a number of different things that it's looking for, because most EDR software like this, most antivirus, most anti-malware, whenever you're trying to protect these systems, we are updating these definition files constantly. I worked as a systems engineer for, at the time, Network Associates, which many of you know as McAfee. I worked for Palo Alto Networks, which has extensive updates that occur on their platforms constantly. So this is not an unusual thing for me to understand. I understand the process and what's happened with those. And occasionally there will be updates that break things. You can't QA for everything. What you don't want to have is what happened Friday, where the update goes out and it completely breaks it, to the point that the only way to repair it is a human being has to visit that computer, and in some cases has to type in a very long series of codes to decrypt give you access to that encrypted system so that you can fix that system. So this is where we sat with dealing with this. What they ultimately found was that the updates that were sent out was a file. What they asked us to delete on these systems to get it working was a file that, instead of having some type of definition or some type of data inside of it, was all zeros. It was all zeros. The all zeros is what caused these blue screens. So the real question is, how did a file that's effectively, it's not empty, but it's just full of zeros, there's a difference. Well, how did a file full of zeros get deployed to all these systems? And a lot of people immediately jumped on the QA process. And as someone who's worked with some top-notch QA people in my career, I'm not so quick to jump on the QA people, because this is obviously something that a human would have seen during the QA process. So blaming QA doesn't make any sense to me. But a number of these processes for compiling, putting together these definition files and deploying these definition files, in some cases, depending on the definition that's being sent out, is a completely automated process. Now, we don't know for sure yet if this is one of those, or if it did require a human being. We also don't know if QA did their job, everything looked great. They handed off back to the deployment team and said, you're good to go. Go ahead and deploy it. It could have been changed at that point. So they could have QA'd a perfectly working and operational technology. Maybe the problem occurred after that. That's why I felt like a lot of people were jumping on the QA process may have had nothing to do with QA. So we have to be very careful about where we blame, where we place blame, or where the problems really happened. But it's if a file that's full of zeros, it sort of smacks to me like some type of deployment process gone awry that copied the wrong information, or they touched a file, filled it with nothing. It was supposed to fill in something else. It was a coding problem. It seems to me it smacks of a coding problem rather than really a deployment coding issue, rather than a human who didn't QA things properly, because it was just too easy. It was kind of easy to blame the QA folks. We always blame the QA. Oh, they let that bug through. I was played a game and bugs here. QA didn't do their job. We were so quick to blame the QA folks. The QA folks have a very well-defined set of tasks they perform. They have a set of tools that use to deploy those tasks. They test it all out. The type of testing and the automation they do is remarkable. So whenever I see people say, well, they didn't QA it, I'm like, of course they QA'd it, because this problem would have been the first thing they ran into if they went through QA. So this wasn't the problem. QA was not the issue. There could have been a lack of QA. That could have been an issue. Could have been a deployment issue, certainly. But I don't think our problem here was QA. But we don't know. And we may never know. They are not under any obligation to tell us the details of this. I imagine some people, especially organizations that have a very big deployment of this technology, will probably get some visits from senior VPs. There will be people flying in. There will be meetings if they haven't had them already. Get in the conference room, tell us what's going on. And those conversations are ongoing. Having been in these types of situations before, it's not unusual to fly in the executives of the company to meet with their security teams and describe what happened and how it's not going to happen again, we promise. And please stay with us, and what can we do to keep you as a customer? Those are the things they're going to do at this point. This will be, interestingly, not the first time this type of thing has happened. McAfee, this happened over at the McAfee days, and where McAfee pushed out an update to their antivirus software, and it blue screened the Windows computers, and it required you to go to those computers to fix them. That's always bad when that type of thing happens. And if I'm not mistaken, at the time that happened with McAfee, that CTO of McAfee, I want to say, is the CEO of CrowdStrike today. I don't think I'm wrong there. He's been through this before. So hopefully he'll be able to address this one and resolve it. I think I got my dates right on that one. But it's the irony of life. It's one of those little tidbits of information that really, well, that's sort of how it works. That's the way it goes sometimes. We will figure out the details of this, and a lot of companies, I think, will change the way they do their deployments, because why would you push out all this stuff at the same time? Maybe we can do 10% of our devices, and then an hour later we'll do the rest. Yeah, that McAfee one was way back, but I remember then. I remember way back. We did that. It was a while back. And McAfee changed the process they used for deploying these. They changed their testing. They changed the deployment. All of these things are learning processes. This one, though, was bad because it affected so many companies. It affected hospitals. It affected, I haven't heard any direct stories of human beings dying because of this missed update. But these are the things we have to worry about because 911 services, emergency services, hospitals, doctors, these are important services. And the people that work in those environments in IT, that's all they think about. They are laser focused on keeping those systems up and running and keeping people alive. I worked in companies where we dealt with insurance policies. I worked for an insurer. Nobody was dying because the printer broke. Nobody was dying because the McAfee update didn't work. Oh, we weren't able to mail out an insurance policy. We were okay. But in environments where it literally is life and death, it is the police department, it is the hospitals, they have a very different approach to network uptime and availability. So you can bet they're going to be in the cutting edge of making sure that does not happen again. That's my perspective. We don't know anything yet. We're just at the beginning of that story. And I'm sure there'll be more things to learn as we go along. Let's go back to your questions. How are we doing on time? We're doing good. Let's go through this list. Let's do a practical question about the exam itself. That's not the practical question. This one is. From Noah, how long should you be spending on each question for any CompTIA exam? This is a good question. Now, if you do the math, you got 90 minutes for the exam. There are a maximum of 90 questions on the exam. Although I would say it's kind of hard to find anybody who's got 90 questions. You often get fewer than 90 questions. But let's just assume you get 90 because the math is easy. That gives you, I've now calculated it in my brain, that's 1 minute per question. So that's your very broad time frames. But the problem on these exams is every question is a little bit different. And you have at the very beginning of your exam performance-based questions that tend to take longer than a traditional multiple choice question. That's something we got to now think about. One of the strategies I've seen people use, and one that I recommend myself, is as you're starting the exam, read through the performance-based question and then skip it. Go to the next one, read through that one, then skip it. Go to the next one, read through that one and skip it until you get through the performance-based questions. You will get a handful of these. There might be 3, there might be 5, there might be 6. We don't know. You'll get a smattering of performance-based questions. And then the rest of the exam is multiple choice. And I think skipping over the performance-based questions and focusing on the multiple choice gets you through the bulk of the exam because you might have 80 questions left that are multiple choice. So now, and there's always a clock at the top of the screen. You should be watching the clock. So you can figure you've got less than a minute to get through all of these questions. For each question, less than a minute. Some of the questions are going to be very straightforward. What would you do if this thing did blah, 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 blah? Oh, I'd do that one. So you can get through that question in 20 to 30 seconds and you're off to the next one. Other questions might take you a minute. But you need to be very careful that you don't spend more time than necessary on any particular question. If you feel that you are, you can flag the question, you can mark it, and go to the next one. Pick an answer of some kind. I think it's B. We'll go to the next one. We'll come back to this. We'll mark it. We'll come back to it. And then at the end of the exam, it presents you with a screen that says, here's what you answered for all the questions, and here's the questions you marked, and you can click to go back to any one of them at any time. You can jump all over the exam. The CompTIA exams are not like Cisco exams. Cisco exams are exams that are very linear in the way that they're set up. So you can start the exam at one point, and then when you answer that question, it takes you to the next question, and you can't go backwards. You can't go in the reverse direction. You can't jump around the exam. And in many cases, these exams are set up to ask you different questions depending on how you answered this one. So this is a very dynamic way to do exams, but it also means you can't go backwards through this exam. Once you answer a question, you're locked in. You got to keep moving forward. CompTIA doesn't do that. CompTIA goes back and forth. You can go at any time to any exam. Once you start the exam, the entire exam is laid out for you. You can hop to any question you would like. So that's why I tell people, watch the clock, get through those multiple choice questions, circle back to the performance-based questions, get through as much of those as you can. Don't leave any question blank, and I think you'll do fine. It's always a challenge. Time management is always a challenge. I often tell people when they're going through my sample exams, start your clock, go through the exam. I have 90 questions in my sample exams. So it's the worst case scenario for timing. So that's why I tell people do that. I think you'll be okay. Other questions. Let's keep going through your list. We've got some time. We'll go through this. Have all of these. The challenge is always working through these different and varied questions you send to me. Let's see if we can break this down. Some folks were saying the 009 course that we're working on, for those of you that have been out to let's go out to professormesser.com/YouTube. If you go to our YouTube channel, there it is. You'll see, well, we've got study groups here. Hey, there's a study group right now. You should probably attend. Look, it's live. We've got other training courses that are on here, and we have playlists. And in these playlists, we have all of our courses. So you've got the 009 course is right here. Let's view the full playlist for the 009. Currently, there are 26 videos here. You can see lots of videos there for the 009 right now. We're really plugging away. So the entire first section is it's complete. We got the entire first one there. So the rest are going to fall pretty quickly as that first section's kind of big to make that happen. But this is where you would find all of our 009. That's why I tell you, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell so you can get notifications. We'll be adding more videos to this. There are no formal release dates. That tends to hold me back. So I just do as much as I can. And as soon as I finish them, I just put them out there. So there is no specific time frame for getting it done. It's going to get done whenever it's finished. And we're just keep putting them out until we get through all of them. So that makes it easy. There's no expectations there on anything at a particular day, but it also means that we're able to produce content without the worry that we're having to rush it out. It will get done when it is done, and it will be exactly what I want to provide to you when we finish that out. So what date will it be finished? I don't know. It gets finished whenever we get to the last video. I just don't have a date. And I realize there's some frustrations associated with that. I completely understand that it would be nice to know when all of this will be done, but it like anything else, if we're going to do it right, then it's going to take some time. We're not going to rush through this, and just keep watching. It'll go fast. You'll turn around and suddenly it'll be finished. We'll wonder, what were we thinking about? It went fine. That's exactly where we would focus our efforts. And that's where I would tell you, don't worry. There's stuff coming out all the time. Every waking moment, I'm working on Network Plus right now. So we'll get it through there and make that happen. Let's talk about renewing. Once you have passed these certifications, once you want to get your certification, it's a question from Anonymous who asks, how many CEUs can I obtain within the 3-year cycle? As many of you are aware, when you pass your certification exam and you earn your certification is good for 3 years for most of these CompTIA exams. This is a worldwide accreditation requirement. So this is not something CompTIA made up. This is something worldwide that everyone is expected to do, which is constantly make sure these certifications are updated so that people's knowledge doesn't stagnate. And I think we do that 3-year cycle is a pretty good one. So after 3 years, that's about the right time to update some of this content and get things going, certainly with Security Plus. So let's think about where we are with these cycles of renewal. I think we should check the CompTIA website for this to give you a perspective of what this is. I'm going to go to the CompTIA website. There it is, with these stock photo people. Hello, stock photo person. None of these people work at CompTIA. Let's go to the continuing education section and let's have a look at how you can renew. One of the things, this question we have is specific to CEUs. So let's talk about CEUs. There's a lot of different ways to renew. CEUs is just one of them. And I think one of the things that people focus on is really understanding what your options are. So let's talk about CEUs and the renewal. We'll kind of focus on renewing based on continuing education units. There's a whole section of it on their website. Let's learn more. Tell me more. If you have earned an A+, you renew that A+ by earning 20 CEUs. For Network+, you need to earn 30 CEUs to renew your certification. For Security+, it's 50. For Pen Test, CISA, and CASP, you have to earn 75 in that 3-year period. So that tells you how to, or at least the quantity of CEUs that you would need. Let's do Network+. Since we are here on the Network+ side, we need 30 CEUs. And it tells you, well, you can earn a CEU in a lot of different ways. You can earn a non-CompTIA IT related cert. You can complete training in higher education. You can participate in IT industry activities. You can publish a relevant article, white paper, blog post, or book, or you can gain related work experience. So there's different ways. One of the things that's important to know about this is that you can't just do one thing often. Some of these you can do one thing, but generally you would need more than one type of CEU. For example, let's say that you attended a live webinar. You can earn 1 CEU for each hour you attend. But there is a limit to the number of CEUs you can accumulate for a live webinar. And they have a chart here on their site. If you have a Network+, you need 30 CEUs to renew your certification, but attending a live webinar, in that 3-year period, you can only accumulate 6. So as much as I would love it, if you could watch 30 of these live streams and earn 30 of these CEUs, doesn't help you. You can only really apply 6 of them. Now you can still watch the 30, not holding you back. You can still do that. But you can really only use 6 of them to apply towards CEUs. You'd have to do other things in different categories, not only on this screen, but other screens in different categories to be able to use those. So unfortunately, within that 3-year period, you can only use 6 of these webinars to apply towards Network+. I think it's 10 for Security+. It's less for A+. But check your website, check the CompTIA website, and they'll be able to tell you what the right number happens to be. We got time for a couple more questions. So let's keep going. This is I'm going to take this question because it's a little unusual, Ahmed. I have to take the exam within a week. Happens someone donated the voucher and I don't have any knowledge in this certification. What can I do in a week? Wow. Well, you would have to really apply yourself. And even then, it's very questionable if you're going to have enough time. I will tell you, just for a point of context, that on the average for, let's just take Network+, that usually it's 2 to 3 months of time that it takes for most people to learn everything they need to learn to go and pass this exam. Now, there are people that can do it in less time, that they can do it in a week. But usually you're walking into the room with some type of industry knowledge already. You've already been working with switches. You've already been working with routers. Maybe you already have a CCNA. You've already done this thing before. So this is, to put it mildly, this scheduling would be aggressive. A 1 week starting at ground zero would be aggressive. Now, your voucher was donated. I don't know the details behind the donation, but if this is something you are serious about and you have a week before that voucher expires, learn as much as you can in that week and go take the test. Don't let the voucher expire. Go use it. go take the exam. Even if you don't feel you're ready, go take the exam because it's a freebie, because it's going to expire anyway. And if you don't use it, it's a waste. But here is a chance for you to walk into the exam room. Maybe you don't even feel like you got a chance to pass it. That's fine too. But now you can step through the process. You can look at the questions. You can understand what they're asking about. You can get the style of the exam now understood, more familiar to yourself. You can learn more about the process when you go to the testing center or the process when you take the exam at home. But don't lose that voucher. The voucher itself is a valuable thing. That's your exam sitting. That pays for the exam. So don't lose that part of it. Even if you are not technically knowledgeable in all of these things that you would need, go take the exam anyway, because it's going to be a good run through. It's going to be a good test drive. And if you fail, big deal. We weren't really expecting to pass. But let's say you just studied the right things during that week and they asked you those questions about the things you studied. Maybe you pass. Then you take it. You just take the pass. Is it fair that you passed? Yes, it's absolutely fair you passed. But you didn't learn everything. You still passed. Take it. You take the win. You take the luck. You take whatever that is. You take the kismet. You were good in another life. Something, you take it and you just run with it. But if you don't pass, that's okay still. You've now learned everything you need to know for the next time you go through this process. So that's my recommendation to you, that a week is aggressive. It's not impossible. It is difficult. Every waking moment we'll be studying for this exam, but you might still be able to do it. There's still a chance. So what you're saying is there's still a chance. I am. It's a difficult chance, but you do what you can. You go through that process. So I would tell you there's benefit there to that voucher. And the thing I just want to get across to you, Ahmed, is that voucher is valuable. Do not miss this opportunity. Go take your exam. So that's at a minimum. Go take the exam. Go do it. More questions. Let's keep going through this list. I've got one more. I got one more in me at least. Let's see. This one's a little scary. I don't know. Another one from Anonymous who says, "Hey, what do you like to do during your hours outside of streaming? What kind of lifestyle do you like? Any philosophies I enjoy?" Well, most of the time I am here. This is what I do. I sit in this room and I write content for you. One of the challenges, and you've probably heard this from other people, write content, it takes a lot of time to write content. So I'm usually up at 5. It's not something I want to do, but I'm up at 5. Nobody who's up at 5 wants to be up at 5. They will tell you they do. They do not. But I'm up at 5. I'm in here. People need their vouchers for the day. I start working on whatever content we need. There's weekly pop quiz questions that need to be written. There's live stream content that needs to be written. There's videos that need to be shot. So a lot of the videos we shoot are offline. So it's the same desk. It's the same setup that you see there. It's this setup, but I'm shooting now for the course. And then break for lunch. Usually I'm doing content creation in the morning, questions, books, Q&A, whatever it is. The afternoon is shooting video if there's an active course. And then break for dinner. Sometimes there's a little bit more at night. But I like to say I work half days, 5 to 5. That's half day, right? It's usually how it works. It's usually 5 to 6, 7, 8, somewhere in there to make that happen. Sometimes I do break out of the house, go do some other things. None of it interesting. Sometimes if I get an hour or two at night, I can hop on the Xbox. I can do a little bit of just mindless gaming. Just get out of the mode of sitting forward in my desk and kind of sitting back and taking it easy. But it's sort of rare these days to do that because we have this course that's going on and I want to get through as many of these videos as I can. They just take time. But that's what we do outside the streaming piece. Spend time with the family and then kind of focus on getting this done. So right now, this is what I do. This is the most important job I have ever had. At least in my mind, that's the way I feel. I think there is an opportunity that we have here to get the most number of people that we can knowledgeable with these technologies, get them a job, get them a better job, get them a better life, get them running in their IT career. I mean, this is what we need to do. So I'm putting as much of my effort into doing this as long as I can. And then at some point, we'll figure out what to do next with this. But right now, this is a pretty important thing for me and for my family. My whole family's involved with this. So I have Mrs. Professor Messer is the vice president of the company. My daughter is doing more project or product management at this point. So there's things she's working on that we're building out. Last week, one of my sons built out new cloud servers for me. In fact, if you're on my website this week, you're using one of them. There's a caching server we built out. So that was kind of fun getting those things going. And my other son is getting his degree in IT. He'll be doing some of this eventually, I would imagine. They're seeing how much fun I'm having and thinking, oh, we should do that. We should have fun with those. And we just have a blast in doing it. They say you shouldn't work with your family, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we have a good time with it. So we kind of make it all happen. We all make it work. And so far, it's worked out pretty well. You know, it's normal things. Behind the scenes, it's a normal world. I still have the things I have to deal with. Oh, the car needs to be fixed and we're out of milk. And did anybody get the mail today? And, you know, take out the garbage. You know, you got to do those things. But in the rest of the time, we're trying to make things happen here. That's the real challenge, is just keeping everything going. Keep the lights on. The lights are on. We're doing okay. And the lights are on. Thanks to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There's an opportunity for me to thank you too, because we wouldn't be able to do that without you. So that's the real key, is making all of those little pieces of the puzzle all fit together. And you are such a huge part of that puzzle. Thank you to make that happen. Let's see if we can get one more question in before we are finished with these. So this is good, since we're talking about what we're doing here and where it fits and how we're sort of fitting into this. Let's get a question from Christopher, who says, do you and your staff intend to expand beyond the core 3, or is the expectation anyone who successfully earned all 3 certifications should not need you to create content for other CompTIA certifications? This is a popular question, but it's a good question. And Christopher kind of sits on the edge of really getting into the details of this. But I will say that I would say in the industry, these are 3 very popular certifications that we focus on: the A+, the Network+, Security+. There's other popular certifications out there and other technologies that I'm interested in, other technologies I would like to do, and other things that I would like to teach, and other courses that would be valuable for other people to take. And we have a list of those. We always keep a list. There's a big moving list. It's sort of the popularity list. It's like the stock market. There's always something at the top of the list. And then tomorrow it could be a different company at the top of the list, different certification at the top of the list. But it could be Microsoft certification. It could be a cloud certification from AWS. It could be an Azure certification. It could be a Cisco certification. It could be a Red Hat certification. It could be I would love to do an Apple certification. But I also have a lot of criteria that go into the decision-making process. Criteria such as how many people would benefit from this course? Would the content of this course lend itself to something that we could create and be happy with? Would the content of this course be something that we could create without hurting the quality of our other courses? So there's all these little tiny things. Some of those criteria are weighted very heavily. Some are weighted very narrowly, and those weights change all the time too. So that's why right now you see the 3 courses here, but we've had other courses that we've promoted before. We've had Microsoft courses on our site. We've had Cisco courses on our site, but we've sort of narrowed it down to these 3 currently, but that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. So we have ideas and other things we would like to do. But you always get to now make those business decisions behind the scenes about what makes the most sense for the most people. And sometimes those are difficult decisions. Sometimes we decide not to do something because we feel that it makes other technologies, the other things that we're working on, better to not do something. As weird, sounds weird, but it actually works out that way sometimes. So that is the mindset that we have around how we decide these things. But a big part of this is your input. If I get a ton of people sending me questions about, hey, why aren't you doing the XVRC certification? I have to send them a note back saying, brother, I have no idea what you're talking about. You are the only person who has ever asked me about the XVRC certification. And that's one of the criteria we use is this something a lot of people are asking about? But if everybody in a week, and this will happen to you often when you're walking down the street and you keep seeing the same thing pop up. It's on a poster. It's on the street. Somebody just asked me about this. It came with my coffee. These things keep popping up. So I'll go through a week where suddenly it's Cisco week and everybody's asking me about Cisco. And what have you thought about doing Cisco? Have you thought about doing maybe a Cisco course? Just constant. And then the next week, suddenly it becomes the Microsoft week. So sometimes I go through those sort of up and down weeks where suddenly something is very top of mind. I get that feedback from you. You are the best barometer for what makes sense for us, for the industry, and for people to do better in their job or their better job. So that's where we sort of focus our efforts. We want it to be the highest possible quality it can be. Even though it's free, doesn't mean it's not a good quality. I think we have focused on twisting that around. That stop thinking about free as being worthless. Free has value if it's done in the right way. And then, of course, we have our perspective of how do we affect the ability of people to get their job or get their better job. Maybe it's not just about certs. Maybe it's about other aspects of this. And I think these live streams kind of focus in on some of that, where we focus the first hour on content from the exam. But I think the second hour gives us a chance to kind of think more broadly about the industry, about how to do better with working with technology, where we should kind of think broadly about our careers and where we should go in general, and gives us a chance to kind of think about, are we doing the right things with our processes, with our families, with our careers? How do we put it all together? There's things we can think about along those lines. And I think those are important things to think about. It's not always about the ones and zeros. It's not always about how many certs have you got. It's not always about what the next thing is. Sometimes it's more about what do we want this to be? And if we know what we want it to be, it makes it much easier to make the smaller decisions about how we get there. And hopefully this is part of your process of making those smaller decisions about where you get there, but also part of your process about stepping back a little bit and seeing the big picture too, because sometimes that is just as important. Well, I think that brings us to a good stopping point. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. Could not do these without you. And in fact, it's kind of fun to talk about what's happening in the world. It's fun to talk about the certifications, fun to talk about the things that you have seen that we get to share and talk about together. We do have a lot more to do. Come on back in a couple of days. We've got our Security Plus study group where we do this all over again, but with Security Plus topics. If you like this video, it would really help us quite a bit if you were to give us a thumbs up. Help us even more if you would consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Really does help with the algorithm and gets people more interested in the things that we're creating here. Come on back on Thursday for this. We've got more Network Plus study group next month. You can always check our calendar for more at professormesser.com/calendar. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.